Calendar, and this is the Ocelli Effect, broadcast live on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. However, you may be encountering us via your fondle slab of choice, your applicable application. The live show originates from AmericanFreedomRadio.com, but however you found us, welcome to you. Tonight is Wednesday, and generally speaking, I have my co-host with me, Sherry Wisdom. Sherry, hopefully you can still hear us and we can hear you. How's it going?
Hi, Chuck. Can you still hear me?
Ah, good. See, right before we went to air, there was a little wrangling of the microphone and trying to figure out why Sherry couldn't hear us or we couldn't hear her. And anyway, but seems as though it's all
Ta-da!
in good working order. Ta-da!
Ta-da! All is good.
Just like that show Bewitched, I guess you just had to wiggle your nose, and here we go.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that these days. I'm just going to say.
And I'll tell you something, normally I would just have Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us for 1 hour on Wednesdays, but instead I decided to drag him in because why not let him be part of my exhaustion and be part of the 2-hour extravaganza on the roundtable tonight. Daniel Lewis Crumpton, the author of Then Came the Flood and the guy behind downloadedcontent.com. How's it going, Daniel? I'm afraid to ask.
No witty intro today. I'm rather exhausted myself, so hi guys, how are you?
Oh, Daniel, why are you exhausted? What's going on with you?
Oh man, those raconteur guys, they got my time clock all screwed up, and I had to get up before the sun actually set yesterday to do a thing, and then I had to do a Jason Patrick update, and
So
well, yeah,
you're just getting into different sleep pattern.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, that's as if he has a sleep pattern to disrupt.
Well, I was going to add in, I guess, lack of is still kind of, it's part of the pattern.
Well,
yeah,
it's good to know that you returned from your recent trip unscathed there, Sherry.
I don't know about unscathed, but, do you hear my voice still?
Uh-huh.
Sounds like you've been yelling, Sherry.
Oh, did you? Oh, you probably didn't hear. Daniel and I did a podcast earlier this week. I don't know if I should just say it on the air or not.
Just say it.
So I did DMT, and the next day I went through the whole thing with Daniel, and he recorded it. So that was insane.
It was like right after she hadn't, thrown up verbally yet about everything that happened. So I was like, wait, I gotta record this. People need to know. So.
It was great. Yeah. So that's out there if people want to hear that. But it was a pretty intense experience for me because I think more than anything, it threw me because I had done a small amount at another time and it really didn't have that much of an effect on me. And this time I had a huge visuals, effects, saw Buddha, a list of other things that were pretty incredible, and then proceeded to viciously throw up for I don't know how long.
Now, before we go any further, before people think we're advocating drug use, does anybody here want to explain what DMT is?
Wait a minute. Why am I not allowed to advocate drug use? This is my show. I can do that. Just saying. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry.
The thing with DMT, in my opinion, is not. I mean, I personally wouldn't want to use it recreationally. It was a lot for me. I don't. I mean, I guess people could if they chose to, but I think it's more of a. Honestly, I mean, it was all types of things, but what I noticed the most profusely and has stuck the longest is the clearing of the body and how in balance I feel.
Well, I'll tell you, before we get into discussing that, I want to let everybody know that I do have phone lines open if you want to join into the discussion. Whether you have a tripping balls story or not, you can participate at 218-339-8525, 218-339-8525. Not sure if Sherry was tripping, but I'm getting this strange impression since she did see the Buddha.
Well, come on, man. DMT is not tripping balls. There's a difference. For the audience, can I for just a second?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you can bang your head hard enough and trip balls for a little while, brother. I mean, there's many ways to get to it. Go ahead.
DMT is more of a passport than a trip.
Okay.
Dimethyltryptamine. Anybody? I mean, Joe Rogan was one of the first guys I ever heard talking about it. There's an excellent book called DMT: The Spirit Molecule. Dimethyltryptamine is obviously what it's short for. It's a natural chemical in the brain. It's in all living organisms as far as I know, so everything has it. But they call it the spirit molecule because if I remember correctly after I read the book, dimethyltryptamine comes out of your pineal gland 3 times in a natural life. One is, I think it's 39 days after conception, which is ironic because that's about how many days the Buddhists say it takes to reincarnate. Then at natural birth, and then at death. So they say that the spirit or the soul or the katra or whatever enters into the body and exits the body through the spirit molecule dimethyltryptamine. Now, other ways, you don't necessarily have to smoke it, but there are other methods to induce the same type of thing as smoking it, I suppose. So it's not really a drug, I wouldn't say, more than it's a natural gateway into what is all around us and inside of us. And I'll let Sherry elaborate on that because I've never done LSD or any other hallucinogenic or anything like that, so I can't account for what that is. But I do know from my.
Well, I have. I have, and it was not that.
Yeah, well, I've done everything from the natural stuff all the way to the scariest of let's just call it kitchen sink toxicology, where way too much rat poison is involved and all that, and you're gnashing on your own teeth. Yeah, I've experienced all that and have not done the DMT thing.
Well, I'm telling you, it's like, it's okay. For me, like I said, the first time I was like, whatever. And then this time, I mean, it was almost like within instants, like, you let out I didn't take a big hit or anything, and you let it out and it's like, bam. And the visuals, I mean, I guess what hit me the strongest is the bright pink and the Buddha, because those are 2 things, to be honest with you, Chuck, that are not, well, first of all, I'm not really a pink kind of girl. Pink is not my color. I don't really like it. And so it was crazy that I was surrounded in this hot pink and orange and yellow spiral, and then sitting at the end was the Buddha.
Now I can kind of tell you right now, she's a little bit more subdued than after she first, because I could tell that it's kind of, she's been able to absorb it. But if you listen to the podcast that she and I did after she had just got back, she was going 90 to nothing. Like, Buddha.
I know.
Slow down a minute. So she's had time to really process this as best as she can. So if you guys want to hear her going 90 to nothing after Buddha tapped her on the shoulder, you have to listen to the podcast. But
it was insane. I mean, it was, and being able to see Christ in a dimensional level and all these other things that it sounds like it felt like it went lifetimes. I mean, I actually looked at the guy that was here to kind of guide me through it. I looked at him, I was like, I'm ready for this to stop now. And then that's when I just started barfing. But it wasn't, even the throwing up was not a bad experience. It was such a clearing in my body. I seriously felt and feel more balanced, even with everything that I've done as far as meditation, as far as, martial art, whatever. My body feels more in balance now than I ever have. And I think that's something to do with the brain for sure.
Now, let me clarify something real quick, because Joe Rogan said this too, and I want Sherry to kind of confirm it for other people. Was it like you went somewhere, or did you actually go somewhere?
Oh, I went somewhere because, and the reason that I say that is because when you try to open up your eyes and try to come back into the place that you actually are, you're not there. I mean, you're really not there. And then it starts to fold and merge back in, but it's like you're seeing dimensionally, and you're seeing both at once, and then it merges in together, and then as you start to come out of the I don't even want to call it a high, because it didn't seem, I don't know how to describe it.
Look, Sherry, let's get our terms straight here, because first of all, a drug to me is pretty much kind of a wasted word. The fact is that there are many things you can introduce into the body that create natural reactions that cause one to have different experiences. Simply shifting your breathing techniques can cause you to experience the reality around you in a different way. Personally, I have told you before about the different interactions with color that I have on a daily basis. You put me in a white room, and I'm having more of an interesting visual experience than some people do when they're actually using, something like an LSD type, chemical. You know what I mean? So, and here's the thing: it's all about what is introduced into the body and the way that the chemicals in the brain sort of reorganize. Now, after you go through stuff like this, no matter what it is, and being that you've been through the more less natural sort of chemical version of altered states, you can also recognize that afterwards there is a clarity that comes because you've absolutely been broken from your sort of normal rut, and coming back down to earth is definitely part of what causes you to re-examine things, right?
Well, re-examine is such a
cheap word.
uh,
I'm trying to leave it as open as possible, because my experiences vary on this stuff.
I wish, like, if you ever do decide to do it, I hope I hope that, I don't know, I would like to be around when certain people experience something like this, because it was unexpected for me. I mean, out of all of the gods that I worship and all of the stuff that I do with paganism, to have Buddha show up, I'm like, what the heck? You notice how I didn't say the F word there, Chuck?
Yes, I appreciate that. No, listen, I have had a literal interaction with a Jesus-type character on a particular mix of chemicals, and I'm telling you right now that, yeah, I really at that moment thought I had met Jesus. What it was is that I had completely overdosed on chemical liquid LSD, and yeah, I saw Jesus. So, and this is coming from the guy who will tell you historically there is none, and I understand that this is an archetype and everything else, but I'm telling you that when I took way too much out of the eyedropper there, guess what? I met him. So
I don't think a lot of people realize liquid LSD is different than taking a tab.
Yes, very much so.
Very different, and it's similar. Okay, so if you can imagine, so I actually one time, anyway, I did liquid in my eye one time, and the visual was very intense. But this was not like that, Chuck. This was like literally like if somebody took you, like you're sitting somewhere, and somebody took you and put you in the middle of a cartoon amusement park. And then you try to come back, and the cartoon follows you. Like everything in my office turned into a living, breathing thing. And it wasn't, I mean, I say cartoon because I don't have a better word, but it was like I could actually feel every material, physical thing having a life force, consciousness. It was like the floor was coming up and having conversation. Mm-hmm. It was insane. With all the stuff that I see, which I'm already, pretty out there, this took me to a whole different level. And what's crazy about it is, guess who's coming into town tonight?
Wow. Just random guess. I don't know. I have no place to even begin to guess.
Max Egan.
Okay.
If you can imagine, the DMT kind of ayahuasca guru. I mean, really, he's coming here. I'm going to meet with him for a couple of hours tonight, late, because his flight
Ah.
could have been late.
Okay,
Because
this is why I couldn't get him until next week. Okay, gotcha.
he's traveling. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
traveling. And he's, Max is, like, it's ironic that this is the time.
Yeah.
Because, he had kind of said something, but this whole experience for me was really out there. And for me to say that is really, to me, something, because it brought in a reality that I did not expect.
Let me ask you this real quick. Do you feel more optimistic about world events or human evolution now, or do you feel like we're doomed?
I feel like there is no doom, and that I feel that complete optimism, and I feel like that there's going to be there's going to be a lot more added to the program for people, but the unveiling and the memory veil and all these other things that people are so concerned about, those types of things are in place for a purpose. And that if it were to fall, or if it were to move in a way that people are hoping, the download that this planet would experience would, I feel like Lucy, that show where she literally turns into, she pixelates, that's what people would do from the inside out, because their minds couldn't handle that type of information. You're talking about your entire paradigm being dismantled and brought up in a different reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you know what it sounds like to me is very much like the experience I had in West Texas, with some Native American individuals who gave me a little something to drink. And quite honestly, I started to feel as though I was I was basically a bunch of particles of sand in a bag,
Yeah.
and everything in the world was made of sand. And therefore, we were all just simply shifting sands. And I was readily aware of my particular bag. But once I relaxed a little bit, I became aware of every single little compartment of sand and the ground shifting beneath me and everything else, whether it was solid or not. The actual experience of feeling the air come in and out as if it was something a bit more murky than the clear air that I was dealing with to begin with. And you started to feel as though there was no separation between the sky, the ground, and everything else that was breathing around you. You could feel the breathing of everything else around you. Now, is it that type of experience with the DMT kind of overload?
But that's after you've gone, that's when you come back, kind of thing.
Ah, okay.
It's almost like, and when you come back, I don't mean like all of a sudden you're like coming to, I mean, it's like literally like what you're talking about, you repixelate, like all those sand granules come back together into form.
Tell him about when you went. About I asked you. Remember, if I asked you, did you watch the atoms and the molecules of your flesh, skin, and bones disassemble?
It was like it was so similar to what you just said, but it was like literally every cell, I watched it pixelate. I watched it literally just like be pulled magnetically from my body.
And then you could see in 360 degrees.
Yes, I mean, and not just, I mean, it was so intense because the colors were so vivid, and this hot pink was so intense, and the geometric shapes that I expected to be more detailed were actually like more like lines. What did I said something, Daniel, like
I asked you, I said, after you met with Buddha, when you were freaking out and Buddha appeared with the two trees beside him and the Bodhi tree behind him, I asked, or you said that he put his hand on your shoulder and you immediately relaxed, and it wasn't a verbal communication. And I asked you, did they give you a mission? Okay, did you receive some type of marching orders, and what was a symbol, glyph, or sigil that was given to you? And you go ahead.
Yeah, and then it was just like a squiggly line.
Yeah, you said it looked like the shirt of Charlie Brown. And so I looked it up real quick, while we were on the podcast and talking about this, which you just got back from, and I looked it up, and it come to find out, we'll tell them what the marching orders that you received were.
Well, I kind of feel weird about even saying it out loud because it just seems so, it was basically just to heal the planet, but it wasn't just like, heal the planet. It was like, heal the planet, heal the planet, heal the planet, heal the planet. I mean, it was like just bombarding. And that's when it wasn't fear, but that's when that's when I started to throw up, I guess. I think that's when it came. Because that's a lot. To kill the planet? What the heck are you even talking about? Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, and it's like they're depending on you to do it.
And that's kind of, I thought to myself, I'm like, I mean, honestly, you guys all know me. Like, I'm probably not the gal for that. I'm not that.
Well, you know what, though? A lot of experiences vary with this kind of stuff. I mean, I could tell you a lot of strange stories, but it sounds to me like you're still sorting out a lot of it. And I suggest you take your time and put it in perspective, because things will click for you and you'll figure it out.
Just join our cult, Chuck. Just join the cult. Just join.
Yeah. Not gonna do it. See, sorry. Go ahead, Sherry.
Meeting with Max tonight is gonna be. I think that'll be a good experience for me, because he already,
now, Do you think that that's a coincidence that he just happens to be showing up in your area right after you have this experience?
No way.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy, but absolutely not. You're right. It's all the synchronicity of things right now is phenomenal.
Well, hey, look, it's an interesting thought pattern, but I don't think we're going to be able to bottle this fast. But you have the podcast, though, where people can listen to it firsthand when she comes out of it over at downloadedcontent.com, right?
Yeah.
Yes, warned that there's a lot of cussing, so that everybody...
It starts off brilliant, and it really caps her experience, and I'm not going to say it on your show, but it's the most somersaults of the F-bomb in a particular sequence that I thought was very, I had to hand it to her. But it summates what she's about to tell you. But go to downloadedcontent.com, and it's Sherry Takes a Trip on the Starship DMT. And, it's on all the other ones too, Stitcher and iTunes and all that good stuff. But it's a great listen. You've listened to it since we did it, right, Sherry?
I did. I tried to, I listened to it.
I thought it was great, man. I was like, yeah, this is what people need to hear who are thinking about either messing around with it, thinking, oh, this is just recreational, or people who are, doing it for the correct reasons, which is, to expand your awareness and see that this universe is much more interesting, larger, and complexly simple than you thought.
I think what the best thing for me, honestly and truly, is I'm happy to be here. And I know that sounds kind of stupid in a weird way, but being in this reality and having the experience of the 3D and having the timeline and having this beginning, middle, and end with all of this crazy stuff in the middle, it's quite grand.
How does the 3-day rule fit into your new awakening here via this experience, I wonder?
I hadn't even really given that much thought, but
yeah,
I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen to me now? But I definitely.
I thought it was great because we were talking for a minute. You got a couple of phone calls, and I edited that out, because people don't want to hear all that. But it was something that was very lucrative for you. And you just totally, and I hope the person's never listening, and I guess we'll just say, I don't know. But you just totally gave him the cold shoulder and had to let him go. And I said, you just lied to that person, didn't you? She goes, I so did, because it's so no thing. It's no thing. Bills and work, and it's nothing. It's all just nothing.
That's bullshit.
Well, it definitely clears the palate and clears away old business when you go through one of these experiences. So anyway, aside from that, because I don't want to meander through this for 2 hours, and we do have a more millennial type young man joining us in the second hour, and maybe some others. I'm wondering what else is on your mind. I'm sure Sherry wasn't really looking forward to going through this discussion tonight. What else is on your mind today, Sherry?
Well, I'll tell you that I've had some other interesting experiences in dealing politically with other countries in the last 10 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Oh, it's pretty.
I gotta go get some popcorn.
Yeah, you should get some because I'm wondering, has something changed recently, Sherry? I wonder what that could be.
Join our cult. Join our cult.
Join the cult. Join
Join
the
the
cult.
cult.
I know.
No, see, I'm not joining anybody's cult. Anyway, I don't do that second show on Thursdays anymore. Sherry, what changed recently?
Well, as you are aware, the country is at a point of a lot of negotiation.
Listen to the carefully chosen words while we draw back and think carefully so as not to feel foolish about what we may have to say. The aside for the listener. Go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I expected, I suppose.
You expected, yeah.
I did expect a lot more cooperation within the United Kingdom and some areas. Once Trump came into play, I kind of honestly banked on it in some cases.
Uh-huh. And pray tell, what are we learning?
Well,
because for the listener and for the listener and for Daniel and for everybody right now, I have not had a conversation with Sherry about any of this, so I'm going to learn right along with you, and hopefully she'll be as honest as I think she's going to be. Tell me what's happening to international relations, because I already know, talking to some other people in some very interesting positions, what's happening, and I want to hear it from you.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh God! All right, so I had to eat some of the shit I said, stuff I said before.
Go ahead.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, it's not working out that great. I'm just gonna say that the negotiations are not easier. In fact, they're harder, and the outside is not really as interested in playing or being. Basically, they're just giving America the big FU. I'm just gonna say it's like trying.
Let me help you out a little bit here. What I've been told from other people in other industries right now is that various parts of Europe, with maybe the exception of Germany and Italy, because Italy is in some upheaval and they're getting ready to do their own Italian Brexit, by the way. But Italy and Germany might be the two exceptions. All throughout Europe, from my understanding, they are taking hard positions with people in the private sector in the U.S. right now because of the lack of predictability from the administration, the fact that we have no idea what this guy is actually going to do, and that there are all these brash and interesting statements, and yet not very much is getting done as far as they're concerned. And they feel as though they cannot rely on the U.S. at this point in time to act in a sensible fashion. And that is in all sorts of sectors. Is that about sum it up, Sherry?
Well, yes. And on top of it, I'll be honest, in my industry, because what I do as an arbitrator, it's called piggybacking, right? And so basically what you do is you assign with a firm that's established in that country. And in doing that, in a couple of different cases that I've had that are basically intertwined with the pedophilia and the things that are going on, whether it's just exploitation or scandal or, fingers being pointed in the wrong direction. There's all these different scenarios going on over there. And they have really come to a place of where nobody has a right to anything. Like they're not playing, they're not even pretending that the citizens or people that come into the UK have any rights as far as free speech or being able to use social media being able to have discussions about any type of topic is a no. And they are busting these people out there.
Mm-hmm.
And causing hardship that is undue by basically forcing them into agreements where they give up their passports for an extended period of time. Financially, most people cannot afford that. And you're not allowed to work there because you're not a citizen. You're not there on any kind of work visa.
Yeah, you require an alien work visa in order to collect money through the legitimate system throughout most of Europe. And I know this from experience. Guess what they're not giving to Americans right now, which I've also been told. Exactly that, right?
Yep. And that's, and this is all part of this, is that it's just like here. There's all this controversy going on about people, that are illegal being extradited and all these other things. But what people aren't realizing is that this has been going on in other countries on a much more extreme level, and nobody seems to bat an eye about it.
Okay, you know what the problem is, Sherry? You have your paperwork in order. Because I'm telling you right now, in the U.S., we have just the same problem. People like to make these suppositions regarding aliens and all these other undesirables coming in and being able to get themselves right away involved in the welfare system. And, oh, my God, look at what the government is giving away to them and all these different things. Let me explain something to the listener who doesn't have his paperwork in order. Go ahead and try to apply for anything in the system. Go ahead and try to do anything right now. In fact, if your real ID paperwork, if you don't have your papers in order, guess what? You are non-existent. Okay, so this is an international problem, and I have this problem right now. So I'm well aware. I can't even, one of my personal situations is, Sherry, I can't even assert anything because I don't have the proper paperwork to verify my ID across state lines. Isn't that cute?
That's ridiculous.
And I'm in a state, by the way, where I'm basically non-existent. So it's funny, across state lines, even in the alleged United States of America, without your real ID paperwork in order, you got problems.
And you know what's crazy to me about this is that they'll prosecute, they'll do things that put people in positions of basic alienation, whether even if you don't get deported, like where are they going to put you? What are they going to do? If they come across somebody in a situation like yours, you have no identification, you have no way of proving who you are, you have no way of proving this. No, what are they going to do with you? They can't. Where are they going to send you?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that, actually.
And seriously, but then on the other hand, then what if you just don't even exist in some weird way?
Well, in that case, listen, in that case, great. I am the voice inside of your head, listener, and that is all I am, a figment of your imagination. What do you think about all this, Daniel?
Man, I've been screaming about the whole real ID thing for years. This is no shocker to me.
Oh, I know that.
Man, yeah, the nail that sticks up gets the hammer. Non-compliance, it's not going to be easy. Freedom is not easy. Liberty is not easy. Nobody said that it was. It's it's there for you, but no. So what is this, like getting bad against Americans overseas now? I don't know, because of Trump. Is that what you were saying?
Well, I've got to tell you that in a lot of sectors right now, because of the perceived instability of the government and therefore the financial institutions here, people are really, really taking hard lines when it comes to negotiating, when it comes to doing business internationally right now. All of that, he's going to be the great deal maker and everything else, has some people a little freaked out. Okay, and they're not buying. They're not drinking the orange Kool-Aid here. Like I said, with the possible exceptions of Germany and Italy in Europe right now, the U.S. is not being received even on the most basic business levels in a kindly fashion.
Maybe it'll tell us to stop acting like the bully in the block.
Well, that might be interesting, yeah.
We've been the world's policeman for how long? Man, America, look, I love the concept and the idea of America and what it was founded on. But this current, like, what the generic commercial America? Jesus Christ. If we need a lesson, it is to stop trying to be the Billy Badass on the block. That's not, the concept of America was, be friends with everybody and no entangling alliances, man. So, okay, what's his face? The chickens are coming home to roost. And if small business owners and people like that are starting to notice it, well, it's your fault, dude, for being apathetic for all these years. Once you wake your ass up and actually do something at the local level in your local government, get involved. Do something about it. Don't wait till it's all pouring down on your head like a bucket of piss, because that's where we're at. So whatever. I just think it's fun. I don't know what made me think of this, but the latest meme that I saw that was hilarious was like it said a map of U.S. presidents, and I had like 40-something saltine crackers, a Reese's cup, and a Cheeto. So I don't know where that came from. I just thought it was hilarious. But if Trump is the catalyst that gets the rest of the block to, I ain't saying beat the shit out of us, beat the bully up, but stand their ground and go, you know what, guys, you really need to chill out a little bit. Yeah, America is the great and everything, but there used to be a different reason for why America was known to be great, rather than going and blowing everybody off the map.
Well, it certainly ain't easy being cheesy, and it's definitely not been easy being greasy. We've done it all in the past few decades. And yeah, chickens coming home to roost is an interesting way to look at it. But I think it actually took the silliness that's being, remember, the rest of the world is watching this stuff, right? Last night I had a discussion regarding the whole, people are arguing about whether the Russian entanglement is a good thing, a bad thing, Trump and the administration and all that, and find it fascinating because even though this guy goes out and tells the world certain things, he's provably lying constantly. Now, think whatever you want of him. This is the face. This is our figurehead. This is our spokesperson right now, as far as the rest of the planet is concerned. So forget about the politics. If he's speaking in an inaccurate fashion constantly, explaining, I haven't called Russia in 10 years, despite the fact that in 2013 he was tweeting about hopefully making Vladimir Putin his best friend because he was in Russia, okay, over there pumping the Miss Universe thing, directly tied to, Russian mobsters, by the way, which I found hysterical. Because, people are like, oh, wow, he was actually tied to Russian mobsters. It's like, well, idiots. He was actually tied to Italian mobsters long before that. But you people don't want to recognize it because the only way to get anything built in New York or New Jersey that involves, a little thing called cement during the time Trump was building stuff meant that you had to, if it was larger than maybe the smallest driveway, meant that you had to do business with Italian businessmen. Okay, so it's impossible to say that this guy doesn't do business with organized criminals. The Russian mob thing was hysterical because publicly it was known that there was a whole Russian mob meeting broken up at Trump Tower, right? And he is publicly known to be involved with individuals who were wanted on Interpol warrants and everything else. And meanwhile, it's like, hey, look, I'm not the criminal, and I don't talk to Russia, and it's just like, listen, regardless of, I'm not even upset that he's a criminal, mind you. It's just that if you're going to deny that you're a criminal, now you're a liar. A liar is, see, a criminal you can understand. If a criminal is being honest with you and saying, look, man, this is the way I do business, I got a little bit of respect for him, okay? But when you're out there and just lying about it, even though you're already busted, I mean, at a certain point, people are going to stop taking anything that you have to offer seriously because everything comes with a disclaimer that comes out of your mouth. So how are you going to make deals if nobody trusts your deals? How are you going to be the great negotiator if nobody wants to negotiate with you, right? Are the chickens coming home to roost? Yeah, probably. Is it the fact that this narcissistic lunatic thinks he can just tell people that, what's fake and what's real, regardless of what's been put in front of them? He's actually half right because half the country still buys it. But I find it fascinating that on a level that you're never going to hear about in the news, on a level that you're never going to see blogged about on a website, that you're never going to hear about on a radio show, God help us if any of these Republicans ever walked away from staying on the Trump train. But I mean, the thing is, all away from all that, nobody wants to take the very simple idea that being a bald-faced liar to the entire world is not going to help us. Because unfortunately, this is the spokesperson. Am I crazy, Sherry? Sherry's probably got her mute button stuck, or she's got some DMT rolling. Daniel, am I out of my mind?
Yeah, dude, you are. You just spent way too much talking about something that's self-explanatory. Trump.
Oh, okay.
All I got to do is say Trump, and like when I went on the show the other day, they said, "Can we not talk about Trump?" I said, "Good, I don't talk about Trump, because he's more like a vomit. What do you call that? A burp vomit? A blurp?"
Well, I think can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we can, yeah.
I think you're giving the American people way too much credit. I'm sorry. But I think that they're falling for it hook, line, and sinker.
Bottom line, you may like it and you may not like it, but this is kind of a maxim that I see that's been true. The people get the leaders or the government that they deserve. Okay? Mm-hmm. The people get the government they deserve. So
and it's scary because people, they fall. It's just like if you take a look at Obama. Change. Okay, great. Well, nothing really changed, right? Well, now what is it? It's bring America back. It's so ridiculous that you're right. It should be right in our face. It should be like, hello, hello.
It doesn't. None of it needs to be explained. The writing is on the wall. This is exactly what the mass American consciousness has produced. A game show host. At least Obama pretended to give a crap. I could give it to Obama. He pretended to give a crap.
No, he was a good actor. I'll give him that.
This Muppet. He's just blatantly letting the American people know, hey, y'all didn't give a crap. Here, this is what you got. This is what you got because you didn't give a crap.
Go ahead. Yeah, you know what the other beauty is, though? Is that the MSM is now pivoting toward him, as I predicted they would, within 100 days. Okay, I asked on Facebook, I put out a thing, hey, look, guys, how long do you think it'll be before they normalize this guy? And most people were like, oh, they're never going to, because he's in opposition to the media, and he's telling you that. But they're running commercials for his agenda. They're covering him 20 hours a day. That is you want to talk about a false flag. The whole concept of him being at odds with the media is a false flag. They are literally selling you the poison directly again. And what's cracking me up is that I don't care about, the American people. Yeah, they get what they deserve because this is what they decided they wanted because they were apathetic, disconnected, and completely ignorant of the entire situation. Fine. But what I'm trying to say is I don't think people appreciate that the rest of the world is looking at this and also taking note. Okay. Sherry's getting to find out how that looks on the other side of the pond a little bit. But I've heard other stories too, where unless you're in some very particular positions, you're now being resisted based on the fact that you're American in a way that hasn't happened in a while.
It's funny. Well, here's the bottom line: is they're making you be. Here's the thing: like you were saying, Daniel. Oh well, maybe we'll get the hint not to be the bully. No, instead, what it is that you're having to be the bully. They're forcing, to get your way, I guess. And I'm not saying that this is, how it should be, but in a situation of representing someone or law or different things, and you believe that you're doing the right thing, regardless of how stupid it all is. It's, you're going to do what you have to do to get your way. And unfortunately, in America, we have learned how to do that. And it has to do with money, power, and contacting the higher ups, contacting the people who are running the show, and then letting it fall from there. Because if you don't have those contacts and you're not moving in those circles and you can't manipulate it and talk in those realms, guess what? You're out.
I don't know. I just know that it's definitely shifting and it's getting strange.
It was
because
go ahead. I've recently had an offshore interaction that I thought was hilarious. And I accept friend requests from people, on Facebook and everything, but you never know. Some guy from Bangladesh, hey, nice to talk to you. I don't know what Bangladeshians sound like, so that's whatever. But we have a nice back and forth. He wants to know what my religion is, and I was like, that's too long to type. So, and he was, oh, I am Muslim. I call you my brother. Okay, and then ... You send me money, so I go to England where chances are better. So I was like, wait, he's getting a hold of an American to give him money to go to England where his chances in life are better. Now this is saying a lot, but I don't know. I thought that was a different thing.
No, and that's getting weird too. I mean, I'm getting the the African chicks trying to contact me, which is funny too. You get those also through your social media where it's like, hey, I need friends and I want to go somewhere, but they're not. They used to want to come to America, right? Now they're asking you for money so they could go to another part of Europe.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. It's not like I get involved in any of that stuff anyway, but it's just something I take note of. I mean, I've also noticed that, by the way, not sure why, but you notice the internet hookers are also coming down in quantity. You haven't really gotten hit up by them lately, or is it just me?
Oh, I get the every day it's a new Facebook profile with like 2 friends and 1 picture.
Oh, no, see, that's on Facebook, but I mean, all throughout, not just on Facebook, but even on Skype. I love the fact that we did that one time. The typical, I'm 24, I'm female, and I've just gotten out of university, want to have some fun Skype request.
I think after I got one convinced that I needed her help to bury a body in my trunk, they put me in some type of database. Because I haven't gotten any propositions on Skype since the can you help me bury a dead hooker?
Well, between bury a dead hooker and can you help me make an omelet and everything else, I mean, you played with them, but I didn't even play with them, and they're gone. So I'm thinking that that's probably outsourced to one of those countries that's on the travel ban list. What do you think?
Gotta be, man. I've heard nothing but crickets on that aspect of my life.
Sherry, have you ever been propositioned on Skype? I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been sent lots of interesting pictures. I've been sent lots of interesting stuff. Yeah.
See, but you get real guys instead of bots, though, I think.
Oh, yeah, I get some pretty detailed images.
Did you have to put a credit card number in?
No.
Yeah, Sherry's getting the real people.
Right. That's what I was saying.
That's even more horrifying.
Sherry's getting the actual guy who's in his mom's basement.
Yeah. We're getting ATM machines.
Yeah, right. I'd rather have that. I'm just gonna say personally. Yeah.
Now that we've gone into the area of distasteful, now dare I ask what's on Daniel Lewis Crumpton's mind today? Because I asked Sherry and kind of spilled my own little thing. I mean, I could tell you guys about what it's like to have to fight with a 2-year-old over a spray bottle of cleaning fluid. But, outside of that, Daniel, yeah, that was fun. But weird day for me, man. But Daniel, what's on your mind today?
No, Vinny's coming back tonight.
There's the silence.
I know, because I don't know what that means.
Vinny Eastwood, man, he's coming back to journalism, man. Coming back to save us all. It's gonna be great.
Oh, I thought you Well, I thought you were talking about somebody that you knew, or like, I mean, not that you don't know him, but I mean, like, I thought somebody in your family, something personal. Oh, I see.
I'm
Okay.
Irish. I don't know any Vinnies. Okay.
Oh, good. Okay, well, go with that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt or sound stupid. Damn.
No, I mean that. What?
You don't know any Vinnies. Now, wait a minute. There's plenty of possibilities for you to know a guy named Vinny that have nothing to do with New Zealand, which Vinny Eastwood is in New Zealand, last I checked. So, yeah, Vinny is not necessarily a name that is just tied to guys like that. And you could be Irish and know a guy named Vinny.
Well,
Problem is you're in the South.
Yeah.
If you were in the Northeast, it would be part of your culture to know Italian culture, because the Irish and the Italians are, stuck in the same ghettos, or at least they were, and they still occupy the same neighborhoods, thusly why it is I've come into existence. So there's lots of Italians named Vinny as well, but not Eastwood. Anyway.
Just saying.
But come on, man. What else is on your mind? Really?
No, nothing. I was worried for a minute there. Where'd he go?
Where did Vinny Eastwood go?
Yeah, where'd he go? Where's he coming back from?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Just wondering. Anyway, no. I didn't know if it was like an event.
How to derail a radio show in 5 seconds or less. Thank you. No, it's cool. Look, we could talk about. Go ahead, Sherry. What?
Oh my God! Don't call on me. Don't bring up my name. I don't know what to say now either. Okay.
It's just let me go grab a cup of coffee. I'm back from getting coffee.
No.
I was gone for 15 paces to get my cup of coffee. Now I've returned to save the universe for journalism's sake and for the internet. Just saying.
You and Vinny. Great.
I'm just me, man. I'm like Lil Wayne. I'm me. I ain't you.
I thought you had some kind of partnership or some kind of thing going on, like Batman and Robin, or.
No, it's just that after this show, Vinny will be on live for the first time in a long time.
I thought it was an event.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry. Anyway, what's on?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise I'm going to have to give you the last couple of minutes here and just tell you about the fact that you've got to avoid leaving anything in a 2-year-old's reach unless you expect it to be spilled, destroyed, wrecked, thrown into water, flushed down a toilet, etc. And the 5-minute rule does not apply. I just want you guys to know that because, Frankie showed me that today in great detail.
I hate lesson. I mean, they're really grand teachers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did not know which way to turn. Should I sweep up the sugar we have just spilled into, a pile onto the table, the floor, and the chair? Or should I go after the spray bottle in his hand, which I'm not sure if he's drinking it or if he's just dumping it on the floor or if he's spraying it on the walls. And meanwhile, I'm slipping on all this, trying to catch up to him while he's running away and telling me no, which is one word he does know how to say extremely clearly. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure, except that it just taught me one thing, which is protect yourself at all times. That was the only thing I learned from that. And keep everything as high up as you can. What?
You can never let your guard down.
No, not at all. It's like having a 3-foot-tall terrorist in the house. Yes. Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yep. And they know all your weaknesses.
Yeah, and while you've, corralled all those things like the sugar and the spray bottle and everything else, well, then we move on to the crayons. And you discover that, well, not necessarily everything that is flat is meant to be drawn on, except in his mind. So there you go. And by the way, the couch is also eligible to be colored in, as well as the front door and everything else, while you're chasing after and trying to keep from slipping on the sugar and spray bottle full of stuff. And that is the way I'm going to end this hour. Sherry Wisdom is with me. Daniel Lewis Crumpton is with me. And you know what? We're going to get into some more serious topics in the second hour and be joined by Asa so that we can get the millennial perspective. Hopefully he's not battling a 2-year-old. I don't think he is, but I am on a daily basis. And damn it, he's winning. The Ocelli Effect will be right back. Ohio has Haphazard. They're playing us into the second hour of the Ocelli Effect here on American Freedom Radio at AmericanFreedomRadio.com, where indeed the live show originates. So tonight thus far, I've had Sherry Wisdom, who's my usual co-host on Wednesdays, and Daniel Lewis Crumpton, my good friend and author, guy behind a few different websites, but most prominently downloadedcontent.com. And we've had a few interesting discussions and interludes of strangeness in the first hour. But in the second hour, we're joined by Asa, who is a millennial person who I have made sure not to get to know very well because I want to hear some fresh thoughts from him. And Regular Joe has joined us as well. So now we have a proper roundtable. Meanwhile, if you do want to call and participate in the discussion, I have phone lines open at 218-339-8525, 218-339-8525. Did I forget to say my own name? Probably. Chuck Ocelli, this is the Ocelli Effect, just in case you stumbled upon us accidentally, or you're unable to get out of your hospital bed to change what's streaming through your fondle slab of choice. Anyway, I want to kick off the discussion in this hour with Asa because we have a lot of different perspectives that are discussed on this show, people from various generational backgrounds, and we often discuss what the younger folks are thinking. We don't usually ask them what they're thinking. We have a lot of dismissive kind of attitudes in some cases, and maybe some overly optimistic attitudes in other cases regarding the direction of our future because, hey, look, I'm in my 40s. These guys are coming up next, and get ready because it's going to be a little different. That's the way I see it. But let's hear from Asa tonight. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you very much for having me.
No, I appreciate it. And it was Sunshine On, who's been on this show before, who introduced us. But I did not want to get to know too many of your viewpoints in advance. I wanted to sort of just pick your brain for a minute and then let us all go around and talk about what you had to say. Given the current climate, whether you want to examine it from a social perspective, from a media perspective, from a political perspective, I don't care. Whatever jumps out at you first. What is the first thing on your mind regarding the world around you, like how you can categorize it? How do you feel about it? And what is it based on?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question for me, I'd say.
Sure.
It's kind of a lot to think about. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I could say it's pretty complicated to me. It's really hard to understand, and I feel like a lot of things that we call normal are extremely unnecessary, and I really question as to why we do these things and call these things normal. And it's ever since I'd say 2012, I started getting into what you'd call conspiracy theories and whatnot. But to me, I didn't know it as conspiracy theory. I figured I was just thinking outside the box and looking for things that, things that weren't talked about and things that were actually important that people would totally reject because that's totally against what they think was normal or what they've been told their whole lives. And I thought that whole thing was interesting, but it also kind of complicated my point of view on the world, kind of made it a little more negative in a sense. But,
Well, look, first of all, don't be nervous. The first thing I note is that you actually listened to the question I asked, which puts you way ahead of half of the people that I have on this show. When I throw at them something that is multi-layered, they generally stick to one part of it, ignore the rest like they didn't hear it. You actually heard the whole question. So I'm going to break down what you said a little bit and try and make it easier. You're coming out of the education system. First of all, how old are you?
I'm 19. I will be 20 very soon.
Okay, great. So at the age of 19, you've already gone through your public education, your re-education camp, whatever, right. The way that I look at it. You've gone through the typical, and what you're saying is that after you got the standard sort of what would they call that? The standard operating system downloaded into your brain.
Mhm.
You said, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, and started to look outside of the box because you felt as though you were put in one to begin with, right?
Right, of course. I felt very foreign to the system. I felt it was extremely unnecessary. I did not fit, and it did not accommodate to me, and I wanted to look towards something else outside of what the information they were feeding my brain that I just didn't really want to take. I felt was unnecessary.
Well, let me ask you to get specific about the system, first of all.
Indeed.
And I do want to bat this around to everybody. Believe me, it's not just going to be between you and I, but what do you mean by the system? I mean, are we talking about the political system? Are we talking about the social system? Are we talking about all of it wrapped together?
I'm saying all of it wrapped together. I think it's like one large machine. It's all constructed from some point, from the top, of course. That I
So
feel
you
in
see-
some
So you see
really
an overlapping
esoteric way, sorry.
grid. No, but you see a kind of an overlapping grid that is
Yeah.
meant to be a driver for the political, the social, the
Yeah.
economic, and all of these things work in concert with each other. So therefore, you view it as one larger major system.
Yeah,
And-
they're all cogs in one large machine. They all work together in tandem. All the institutions like politics affect the media, and the media affects the social point of view.
Right, and then all of these things coalesce into the financial and the real world effects
And of
that it
course,
has on.
yes, the economics and everything, of course, affect the social situation more.
Okay, so you have this sort of cascading view of a singular system that appears to be compartmentalized, but really functions in cooperation with each other's parts, and they're not really separate parts. It's sort of like just one large machine, and and you felt alien to it. Why
Yes,
is that?
very much. That's probably one thing I couldn't explain. I still couldn't explain that till this day. It was just I just didn't feel right. Just something didn't feel right. The whole, And then when I found, other outlets of information, independent journalism and whatnot, like going to these places and videotaping these things they would never show you on the news and whatnot, really sparked my interest and really got me questioning about basically everything and whatnot. And
So citizen journalism, along with alternative media, gave you an idea that there might be something else to the equation.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's
It's all
cool.
through.
Now, I want to stop right there with you just for a second and get everybody's thoughts. Let's start with Daniel, actually. I'm sure you listened to what Asa just had to say. What do you think so far?
Yeah, hey Asa, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
I think anybody who's like about to have or is going through an evolution in consciousness, there's always some event that triggered them in 2012. That seems to be a year that I hear a lot.
That was the year. I'm telling you, that was the year.
What do you remember? What specific thing kind of sparked the question? What was it?
Yeah, I kind of have a story behind it, but I could shorten it up a little bit. So luckily, the year of 2011 and 12 of my sophomore year of high school, I had a history teacher who he was like the first person to kind of spark my interest about getting our information from somewhere else, and not going from the school textbook and whatnot. And he told us specifically, like, the school textbook will never tell you the full truth, and it might, and if it does, it omits the most important parts that you really need to know. And that was extremely interesting for me, and that really got me going about, just alternative, ways to get, well, I guess what everyone else would call alternative ways to get your information.
Well, part of the truth may be contained in the curriculum, but definitely not the whole thing. Is
Right,
what
of
you
course.
were
The
what
most
you were being
important
told.
parts.
Yeah.
Now, this was a teacher in a government facility.
Yes.
And see,
And he actually
go ahead.
he was reprimanded later in the year for using other books other than the textbooks.
Yeah. See, and I just like to point that out. Well, sometimes those of us who are, awake or whatever, we condemn the government systems, but we got to realize we got infiltrators in there too, waking people up, like your teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was doing his part. Yeah.
And whenever you first started to go to like alternative media and stuff or alternative sources of information, did it take you ultimately to 9/11?
Oh yeah, of course. That was always a thing because honestly, amongst the millennials, that was more of like a joke, kind of. That was like a really big joke for a long. It still kind of is. Like,
What do you mean?
for social media, like on social media, like they would just make jokes about it. It was kind of a funny thing, you know. Like, I don't. It's not funny, of course, but for some reason, like
I think what you're saying is that challenging the official story is mocked on
yes,
social media, and
entirely.
so therefore, and because you didn't have a real memory of it, you might have had a vague recollection of it, having been a small child at the time, and your contemporaries the same, maybe being babies or not even born, some of them, at the time 9/11 happened, right? It definitely was sort of the unreal piece of history. And what are these people going on and on about? Oh, they're just all crazies,
Right.
is the generally accepted way of looking at it. So this is something that hit you in a way. And what did you think of it?
I don't know, like it didn't make me feel a certain way that they thought it was funny. If like, of course, it's not funny, and I wasn't very happy about that. But if anything, if it wasn't like a joke, I wouldn't have caught on and actually tried to research it, because that was like one of the very first things that I had tried to research before I moved on to like getting into alternative media outlets and whatnot. Like, I'm scouring YouTube and watching the hour-long videos of breaking down the whole 9/11 thing, whatnot. And,
Well, I remember.
No, I got.
If I can, I remember what got me onto 9/11 truth was I heard Sean Hannity when I was before I was started to wake up to politics, go off on the creators of the Loose Change documentary. And when I first heard it, I said, "Oh, how could you dare question the official story? That's just nonsense." Because I lived through it and everything. But then I was like, I'm gonna watch this documentary and go point by point and prove these guys wrong. And then when I got done with Loose Change, I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Because
yeah.
there wasn't too awful much that you could say wasn't common sense, that the official story is total bunk at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with that, I'd kind of like to go over to regular Joe, because he has a very plain way of putting some of this stuff. And, I'd like to get his thoughts on what we've discussed so far here with Asa.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, on 9/11, I was at work. Like, I'm 41 years old. And hello, panel, by the way, Sherry, Daniel, Asa, Chuck. So I was at work, and of course, when I got home, it was still all over the news. So this, I didn't see it live by any means. But at the time, I had been watching a lot of this particular show on Discovery Channel that was all about demolition. And they were very specific about how they had to set their charges and how they had to go off in order for the building to fall into its footprint. So when I first saw 9/11 happen, the first thing I said to my wife was, well, she wasn't my wife at the time, she is now, but I said to her, that's demolition. That's definitely demolition. I mean, how did they get the bombs inside the building? Why did they need to hit it with a plane? So it didn't make sense to me from day one. And coincidentally, I cannot find those shows on that demolition anywhere. And I find that strange. But so I never bought that story at all. But you were talking about waking up around the year 2012. For me, it was, and I hate using that term, but, just for the sake of, it was 2013 for me. And my wife was taking a comparative religion course. And I started noticing the similarities in all of them, which I had never noticed before, being raised rigidly Baptist in a
Amen, brother. Amen.
You got that right, brother. Preach it.
Mm-hmm.
That'll preach, brother. That'll preach.
So yeah, that started to open my eyes, and now I'm ashamed to admit that what did it for me is I saw the film Zeitgeist. And then I was like, I always knew something was wrong, but there's a lot more wrong than I thought.
Yeah.
And it put me into all the conspiracy stuff. And, let me thank the flat earth people for pulling me out of that. Because if they can make that sound good, anybody can make anything sound good. And that pulled me out of the really deep conspiracy stuff. And I just started deciding for myself, what can I observe? You see? So.
No, and I think that's great. I'm just trying to get a handle on, look, here's somebody who's 19 about to be 20, and they came to things in a similar way that we've heard from people that are older. I don't think that that any of this is lost on the younger generation. Sherry, what are your thoughts so far with Asa here?
Sorry.
Sherry might be arguing with her mute button again. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, good. No, we you never know with this silly mic.
Right.
I think that it's fabulous that at such a young age you're coming into a place of at least having an understanding that you may not have been taught the right thing. I get, or the right situation, or that things around you are not as they should be, even though that's what everybody is falling into. I love that. I think that that's part of this. And how old are you? Am I
I'm
supposed
19.
to? I mean, that's fabulous.
No, it definitely is. And here's the thing about it, though. There's a separation here between learning that you've been lied to, though, and I distinctly heard him say that he felt alien in the system. Now, that's a little different kettle of fish. So I'd like you to explain what you mean by you felt as though, I mean, see, people lying to me, I'm used to. That is kind of comfortable, actually, you know, whether it's women, authority figures, whatever. It doesn't matter. People lie to me constantly. So this is nothing unusual as far as I'm concerned. It took me a while to wake up. But, see, being lied to is not enough to make you feel alien in the entire atmosphere.
No.
So what is it that triggered that feeling? Because to feel displaced in the world, I got to tell you, I identify with that. I've never felt like I belong here anyway. So I want to hear why it is that you feel that way and see if we can connect that dot together with the other one.
Let's see. I guess I could start with, well, of course, really young, being around my parents and not even, of course, being raised by them, not necessarily sharing their view ever. I grew up Christian, of course, because my mom was Christian, and she used to tell me like stories about going to heaven and whatnot. And for some reason, instead of making me feel good and whatnot about being a good person, going to heaven, it kind of scared me because I didn't like just how it didn't necessarily make sense, I guess.
The punishment and paradigm thing was intimidating and ridiculous. Yeah, because I understand that, but
I had to be a ridiculously wonderful person to make it into heaven. And if I slipped up, if I sinned one time, I could go to hell. And
Jesus Christ.
that was so scary.
Were you, bro?
That was I don't even know, man. That's just what I remember, and that it just scared me a lot. That's just how I perceived it. It probably wasn't how I was told.
I'm going to start a Christian recovery group, and Joe and Asa are coming with me.
Yeah.
You would definitely be popular with a Christian recovery group, man. What Ace is telling you here is something that I hear from a lot of people, is that as a small child, this concept of, everlasting burning hell and paradise being put on the scales is really an intense thing, because
it did not seem right at all. I felt like a restriction of my free will.
Chuck, I was about 18 or 19, like Asa. Whenever they pulled that whole hell and fire and damnation and demons shoving pine cones up your ass for eternity, I'm going to tell you something. It traumatizes you, dude. It really, really does. And
I was told all that.
Yeah. So you can identify, the ones who are good at doing it, they scare the living hell out of you to where you're traumatized. That's all I can say. So you're susceptible to programming.
Well, right, and that's the thing, but I think Ace is describing it as being part of his experience coming into existence, really, in his memory, is this concept, this paradise and punishment concept, and that definitely skewed his view. But again, I don't think this was enough to make you feel alien. What is the alienation about, Ace?
That's the part that's really hard to explain. There's no way I could really explain it explicitly. It was just not wanting to be. I don't know.
Well, look,
not wanting to be here and follow the norm, or like
Right. But look, hold on a second. In order to have a concept of alienation, one has to first have a concept of identity, right? So either you have a loosely set up collection of possibilities for your identity, or exactly who you are.
That's a good way to put it, I guess.
Okay, now
That's
one of those camps you probably fell into, I mean, almost, and this is nothing unusual to your age group now, the millennial group or the homeland generation or whatever. We all went through this at some point where there was a time when identity was still something to be questioned, and then it sort of solidified, and then you got to do revisions. Okay, we all go through this, but to be feeling as though you're alien among everything else that's going on, that means that you definitely felt like something was in opposition, something was completely outside of your understanding, your concept of the world in one way or another. And I'm trying to get at, a general idea of what that might have been. Is it that you had to fall into a hard identity and you weren't ready to do that? Or is it that you had an identity and it was incongruous with the seeming acceptable places you could begin to label yourself? What are we talking about?
I mean, that's a complicated one. Yeah, I guess I couldn't necessarily label myself really. That's the kind of, it's just based on confusion, I guess. I'm really confused. I feel like I'm not the only person. I feel like majority of my generation is kind of going through the same, I guess you could say, identity crisis kind of thing. But with me, with like me being more of an open-minded person and me wanting to, like search for kind of more just from, I feel like I still have that remaining like child fascination with things that are, quote unquote beyond whatever.
Feel like,
I don't know, just like,
do you feel like that you're in a position of no compliance? That basically you're not going to, you don't seem like you're in an uproar. You just seem, like in a strong stance. And so do you feel like through all of this that you were kind of in a position of you just weren't willing to comply to what society was saying?
Yeah, exactly. I like angrily don't want to do what they tell me, what they want me to do.
That's the
it's confusing, and it's makes me angry, and confusion stems from anger.
Have you ever researched the indigo child?
Yeah, I have.
So that's a lot. I mean, if you look at the indigos, the crystals, when Chuck, I mean, I hope I'm not like completely jumping here, but it seems like what I think what Chuck's trying to kind of get you to maybe go into a little bit is when you're speaking about alienation. I mean, do you feel like you're here from another planet? Can I just jump it?
Maybe not necessarily another planet, but maybe at least from another time or something. Another planet. Like, yeah, maybe just another place that another norm, a more logical norm, exists.
You don't feel native here. You feel like you're from a different place. Dimensionally.
Yeah, I feel like maybe humanity is not native here. We don't live in sync with the earth whatsoever. We've completely thrown off the balance. I feel like we don't even have the native instinct to really know our place on the earth. Maybe we all don't belong here.
Now we're cooking with fire.
There we go.
I can relate to that as well.
I mean, this is rough.
It's hard to explain.
19 years old and you're talking this way.
Well,
this is fabulous.
Sherry, and we both need to you're not alone, okay? You're not alone. So that's the first most important piece of advice I can give you. You're not alone.
You're not alone, and you have people that are walking in front of you to clear the way. It's like we have been here. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm walking it, and I've been doing it since I can remember. So you coming in now is the catalyst. Don't stand down. Just keep walking it. You're doing it right. Don't listen to them.
Yeah, I find this interesting that what's emerging in these discussions quite often in, again, I hate to use the term alternative, but in the actual alternative discussion areas, we're finding that people are addressing the idea that we're not living in harmony with the environment around us, that this has negatively impacted us collectively. And even Asa here is talking about, his own personal identity to some degree, but is also talking about an awareness of the very same thing that, quite honestly, I think it took most of us a little longer to get to. I think they're doing it at a quicker pace. These millennials, homeland generation kids, etc. They're actually able to, and that's not to say they're all doing it, but I think a significant portion of that generation is doing precisely this. And yeah, we do see a lot of them, staring at their freaking devices and getting lost and whatever, but not all of them. And I think that needs to be noted here. What do you think, Joe?
Definitely, because I live right next door to a millennial. He was actually born the year that I graduated high school, so I've watched him grow up. He's been my neighbor my whole life, and his interests are not anything like yours, Asa. Nothing at all. So yeah, it's good to see someone your age that is thinking, period, thinking, because we don't. And I like what you said, that we don't live in harmony with nature. And furthermore, I think that human beings as a whole don't even know what a human is.
Yeah, we don't know our place whatsoever. Our impact on the entire environment has definitely been a clear example of that.
And the other thing is that you're in opposition to the re-education system, okay, which is there to divert us from our natural beings, in my estimation. It is there to keep us distracted and confused. So mission accomplished, as far as I'm concerned, for the past few decades.
Quick question there, and Asa, don't feel like I'm trying to quantify you by intelligence or anything, but just out of curiosity, are you a good student with your grades or a bad student with your grades? And that doesn't indicate intelligence because it's clear that you're intelligent. But what does the system mark you as?
With my grades, I was a pretty bad student.
All right,
but
all right.
In my defense, I did good in class. I did everything in class. I just never wanted to do homework.
All right, that means you're a genius. You're a genius. That's what that means.
I went home and I worked on music all day and skipped all of my homework by choice.
Okay, so all those grades that you got, those report cards, file 13 them now.
Yeah, one thing to note here is that Asa is a musician also, by the way, and I hope to get to talk about that a little bit before we're done tonight. But I also wanted to give him the platform to start to discuss what the education system was like, since he just finished with, it's been a little while since you've been in there, but you just finished with the standardized education, which is there to teach you how to repeat things that are not necessarily entirely true, is there to teach you some mathematics and a few language skills that are also convoluted, and hooray. It's not really great, although there are infiltrators, as Daniel noted. It's not a great thing, and gee, you just didn't comply very well to being a good little brown shirt, did you? So I would like you to talk about the education system, because that seemed to be the thing that caused you to react in the first place, is that sort of unnatural pushing of alleged information on you, and this is where you started from.
Let's say I was like one of those kids who, I guess I was lucky, they didn't want to feed me ADHD medication my whole life. I got extremely lucky. I just didn't want to pay attention. I felt forced to do everything, to learn things I didn't want to learn. And yeah, of course, there were practical things that we learned in school, but by the time high school rolled around, my mind was filled with like complicated algebra and, higher science classes. And I was just like, I should at least choose to do these higher classes and whatnot. I should at least have a choice right now in my high school years what I should learn, or at least like, in some way. And the whole systemic process of it was just sour to me my whole life. I didn't like it ever since a child. I couldn't really explain why in my earlier years, but later on I just kind of felt like I was being fed a bunch of BS instead of them teaching me how to grow up, be an adult, and get a job, move on with my life, and be a successful adult member of society. Like, not at all. Like, I learned algebra, It was, it didn't feel necessary to me. I wanted to be outside and learn from nature and do some activities, and like, I don't know, at least, you do that when you're younger, but I felt really restricted. I had too much energy. They wanted to sit me down and, force feed me. I didn't want to sit there for them. Yeah.
No, and here's the thing. They're force feeding you a lot of things that you do recognize as impractical. If they had taught you some life skills and some real usable information, this would have been worth your time and effort.
Yeah.
But you weren't a good student because, you're sitting there going, this is all superfluous information. Algebra to a musician, by the way, is like a chewed up track that doesn't sound right because it doesn't flow anymore. If they had taught you calculus and algorithms, it might have made a little more sense, but they didn't do that. They wanted to teach you this nonsensical Western math style crap, which they have altered even from the time I was in school, and it's just useless. Yeah.
Yeah, to make it more this unnecessarily complicated, just to confuse you more, just to fill your mind with crap and to make you confused. To get your mind off the things that are really important, the information that you really need. You're too busy studying this useless crap you're never going to use, cramming and doing all these crazy tests. It's unnecessary, in my opinion.
Right. And outside of the fact that this is probably a good argument for homeschooling, Daniel, what do you think of what Ace is saying now about the education system?
Dead on the money as far as whenever you are built or came here for greatness, that should be the typical experience going through that system. Let me ask you real quick, Ace, so what's your zodiac sign, just out of curiosity?
I'm a Taurus.
A Taurus? Oh boy. Okay. Here's the best piece of advice I could give you of why I would have been considered very much a slacker in school, though I am pretty intelligent guy. But the best way I can kind of give it to you is don't feel bad about that label that might be slapped on you later in life or now, because I think it was Alan Watts said, we go through this education system and we're taught that in order to be happy, you got to have a good career and make a lot of money, right? And so we do what they tell us, and then we get a good career, we get a good job, and we get money. And what happens when you lose the job? Well, you lose the money, but the purpose was the money. So now you got nothing, right? You got nothing. But if you do what brings you happiness, true happiness, the money will come. So even if you lose the money, you still have happiness. And the way Alan Watts really summed it up, he said, is they will fool you, the system, into believing that you should have a security net. But the only security net you can ever have in life is happiness. So if your attention is, what instrument do you play?
I play guitar mainly.
All right. If that thing's speaking to you like that, and you are addicted to it, and that's where you are God, is when that thing is in your fingers. Do it, and do it. If the world comes to an end around you, keep doing that thing, because that's what you're here for, and that's how you change this whole thing that me and Sherry and Chuck and Joe have been pushing. We've been pushing a lot of the hard part away for you guys that are coming in. So it's not going to be as difficult for you to operate within society as it has been for us, because, we're the tip that broke the matrix, I suppose. But now we get to look at you guys and see what we push through for. And it's about what puts you in a place of absolute incredible divinity. And if it's that guitar, all that crap that they tried to stuff down your throat at school is garbage. Flush it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right. What do you think, Joe? Because I know you have something to say on this type of a thought process too.
Well, touching on Asa talking about his fascination with nature, that's just fantastic. Pursue that. It brings me a lot of joy personally. And the way you're talking about the education system, it doesn't sound like it's changed much since my day. And if you want to read a good book that gives a good perspective on the education system, I would recommend Brave New World Revisited by Aldous Huxley. Of course, read Brave New World first because he's mostly talking about the novel, but he does get into a lot of the education system, and, well, it sounds a lot like what you were saying about it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, if they didn't make you read that already, yeah, exactly. And Brave New World also goes along with 1984. If you put them together and you mesh them together, you sort of see what the plan was. And we do have the ability to throw that into chaos, to change its direction at any point we choose, Asa. So keep going with what it is you're going with. Sherry, what do you have to say about this?
I think that it's an interesting aspect because if you think about it, at your age, you will have at some point the control to actually make changes. Your age group will come into a place of power. And so regardless of how long that takes, it is a forefront. And so starting to open up people and adjusting to a new way of life is definitely inevitable. So I think it's great.
See, I think the one problem I have with what you just said, though, Sherry, is this: they don't need to come into these typical, standard sort of position of power. They're already there. That was the delusion that I think hamstrung a lot of us earlier on. We are already part of the structure. We are already able to affect things immediately. This is not something that is going to take a great deal of time if you go down the right path. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm too optimistic. What do you think, Daniel?
No, man. I was listening to some interviews from Tupac Shakur in the past week because he was one of the greatest philosophers of our day. But he said,
Tupac Shakur was a rap artist, by the way, Asa, who allegedly died. Okay. No, just checking because, we're a little, it was a few years ago now, Daniel, so you got to watch.
He's a philosopher, Tupac. But
yes.
But Tupac, he had the wisdom of the streets, and he said it in the way of the streets, but it was still wisdom. But he said, I wake up every day as if I'm the one that's going to change the world, and that may not be so. But what I will do, I guarantee you, is spark the mind of the person that will change the world. Because it's our responsibility to be that spark for everyone watching us.
And, before we run low on time, Asa, I do want you to talk about your music a bit because this is your passion and this is your expression. And who knows, maybe this is precisely the spark that's going to light the brush fire in the right person, whether it's you or it's somebody who decides to listen to it or it's somebody, that just happens to stumble into your stuff. What are you trying to communicate with your music? What is it about and what are you doing?
Well, me and a good friend of mine, we were in a band a couple of years ago. I came to him with some music and an idea about some really crazy death metal music because that's what we were into before, but with like some other cool influences. And our main theme was supposed to be about like empowering like the human ability, getting rid of self-doubt, like transcendence, all kinds of stuff like that. Putting that into like death metal, it seems kind of crazy, but I want to, kind of make a statement, I guess, with our positive lyrics. And yeah, we are a three-piece, I guess you can call it technical death metal band. Pretty extreme, got a lot of orchestrated instruments, guitar solos, all the fun stuff. It's the new modern metal music.
Back in a decade called the 90s, I was doing something very similar. Just so you know.
It's awesome. Sure.
Didn't get out there very big, but it did all right for its time. And there's lots of interesting guys who do fusion stuff with death metal too, which like I used to love bands like Cynic. I actually opened for Cynic.
Oh, that's amazing.
And bands like that back in the 90s. I knew you would recognize that name. I also opened for like, Cannibal Corpse and those people too. But, there was a time, but my stuff was weird because I was sitting there talking about, the battle with addiction and how, the drug culture was destroying people because of their own illness within them that was drawing them to it. This is what the problem was, is that it really was an illness and not necessarily the illness of addiction, that it was something else that I couldn't put my finger on. And I was expressing that through some of my music, also anti-war stuff and a few other things. And that sounds kind of strange with that death metal tone.
Yeah. Right.
but it was hitting people over the head with something to get them to think about it. And if they actually studied the lyrics, which some did, they were kind of amazed at the strange places that we would go. But there's lots of different ways to do this. And actually, I'm hoping to get a hold of some of your music. I told you that off air. But hoping to get a hold of some of your music and maybe have you come back on and just focus on that.
Okay.
What's the name of the band? And do you have a website or anything for it?
We have a Bandcamp, and we're on social media, Instagram, Facebook. We are called In Apparition Form.
Okay, spell that for people.
INAPPARITION Form FORM. Yeah.
Very cool. And I'll try and put a link with this later to one of those social media things. But I think definitely look, you might change too. You're gonna go through some changes as a musician. We all get a little bored and decide that we want to experiment and things like that. You never know where it might go. But I'm somebody who's a big fan of communicating ideas with music. I know you are too, Daniel.
Oh yeah. Is that out of New York, Asa?
We're coming out of California.
Out of California? Okay, I was looking for you on social media. I gotta ask you though, man, is Radiohead in your inspiration catalog anywhere?
Well, a long time ago, yes, I would say.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
But,
you just kicked some dirt in my eye right there.
Sorry.
You're old.
This music is extremely modern.
Thanks, man. You kicked the man down. All right. So,
you just got told you're old. Okay. Yeah.
Dude, hey, man, I ain't got nothing on you, bro. Come on, man.
I know that, but a long time ago.
Just keeping it real.
And with that, I know Joe's a big fan of music, as similar music to the stuff I like, actually. Regular Joe, what do you think about, communicating these types of ideas with the more aggressive music and just the concept of creating things that are meant to be inspirational through a media called music, which, the industry has changed, but there still is music, Joe. What do you think?
Well, as long as you're making it and not selling it, man, because once you get the idea you're going to sell this, then you're not really making music anymore. You're just producing swill. Yeah. So if it feels good, do it, man.
Mm-hmm. Doing it.
A lot of interesting stuff has emerged in business practices where people are giving away the music, but still getting paid to tour and stuff like that. I think they're still sorting it out, since the days of Napster and Metallica complaining. But I think that you're coming into it at just the right time, man. And it's going to be an interesting new structure where you might actually find a way that is not typical with the old models to support yourself with the creativity and not necessarily be out there pushing a product, because that's what Joe's really talking about there is,
right.
Look, either you're a salesman or you're a musician. It's very difficult to be both. And
business or it's a passion.
Exactly.
If it's also a passion, the money will take care of itself.
Exactly.
Right. And also it could interfere with the creative process if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to make something I can sell. No, make something that you like. Make something that feels good, man.
Mm-hmm. Sherry, what do you think of all this?
This is a lot out of my realm, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, no problem. I just figured I would, I didn't want you to feel alone.
I just don't, I don't like that kind of music.
You don't have to like that kind of music, though, Sherry, because you can recognize...
If it's, like that, I used to listen to Metallica and Judas Priest and all that stuff when I was younger, but I like different stuff now. I don't know.
But Sherry, come on now. I got to tell you to step outside of the box. Think about just the idea of creation and the fact that somebody's using a creative passion to communicate an idea. You can't say, oh, at least I support that regardless of what form it takes.
I love it. As long as I don't have to listen to it, we're good. Like, I think you should just let everyone else listen to that.
Yeah, but but keep in mind, Sherry, he's 19 and he's angry like we all were when we first woke
Oh,
up.
I
So
love it, and I think you should express it. But I have teenagers, and I have, adult children, and oh my God, I already went through all this so many times. I feel like I want to like shoot myself in the head when I hear that stuff. But it doesn't mean that you don't have a good message for your generation. And so I think it's fabulous that no matter what you're doing, that you are going in the direction that makes you happy. And I personally believe that you can make money doing anything you want, because it's not, money is a no thing. Money is a vibration. We have made it into this villain and demon because the elite and this and that, and it's all BS. It's just about really a vibration. If you allow it to flow through you, it doesn't matter what you do. It's going to flow like water.
Well, and here's the other thing, Asa. Like I told you about the changing times and how you may change your attitudes and adjust and revise yourself. You're talking to a guy nowadays who is trying to do positive things and give out a positive message through talk radio, right? But I actually almost replaced, and if you don't know who this is, I almost replaced a guy named Gigi Allen in the Murder Junkies. Go ahead and do a Google on that for a second.
No, I know who that is.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I opened for him too, by the way.
Wow.
They told me
good.
that they were happy to have me replace him, but they couldn't find me when I ran into Merle in a bar in New York. So think about that when you're dealing with your angst. That's how far gone I was. I used to strangle myself with a mic cable and occasionally bust my own head open during shows because I was just that out of control on stage. But over time, I sought to produce positive messages. Even back then I was, believe it or not. But the thing is, you may find adjustments in your attitude, and don't worry, there's nothing wrong with that either. Go with it the way it is from within you, okay? Because you never know where it might take you, and it's going to always take you somewhere really interesting if you let it happen naturally. So anyway,
I burnt my hand with a hot caramel macchiato while I was reading poetry at a coffee shop.
well, but see, I used to do spoken word and poetry. I used to do poetry readings too, with stitches on my head and what have you. But I used to do poetry readings on certain nights, when the bars weren't kicking. And I'm just saying, over time, these things will change, and you never know what form it may take. So go with it, my friend, because I'm a lot happier doing what I'm doing than I was being angry when I was angry. Although if I tried to do this when I was angry, it wouldn't have worked either, because I had to be myself. And that's just the best thing for anybody to be as honest to what they can perceive as their own self-image at all times. And so I'm glad to hear that you're on the right track. And, we're almost out of time here, and all of a sudden I do hear a deluge of rain around me. So hopefully I don't get cut off toward the end of my own broadcast. But kind of like to get closing thoughts from you, Asa. I know we didn't get too many subjects done, but what do you think of the discussion tonight, and would you be willing to return?
Yeah, I would be willing to return, of course. It's very interesting. I enjoy talking with you very much. I feel accepted here.
Well, that's great. Daniel Lewis Crumpton, the guy, like I said, is behind downloadedcontent.com, also the author of Then Came the Flood, and partially a pimp for me occasionally on other radio shows. DLC, what are your thoughts from tonight? And I say that because he was just on Raconteurs and he said some nice stuff about me and all that. So anyway.
Hurt. Yeah, man. Asa, just keep it up. It's not. I'm not going to lie to you. Being different is not always going to be an easy path for you, but you have an advantage, which is make connections with some of us. I'm not going to say older people, but start making as many connections as you can. I mean, and through social media, it's great because you can connect to other weirdos and different people around the world in a heartbeat. Right. But just dude, follow your passion. That's all that matters. That's what you're here for. Don't ever come up with a plan B in life. Because if you do, it'll become plan A. Just stick with plan A, man.
Absolutely, man. Regular Joe, always look to you because your feet are generally planted so firmly on the ground. It kind of worries me on occasion that you're listening to me all the time. What do you want to say to Asa as we, or about the conversation in general tonight?
Well, I had fun, and I always enjoy your show. If that makes me a weirdo, I'll take that. and Asa, if people are calling you a weirdo, man, great. Because if we're fitting in with this society, we are the problem.
Indeed.
There you go.
There were a lot of talking points tonight. We mentioned the psychedelics. That's a whole other conversation for me. Lots of stories. Mentioned the politics. Mentioned all of this. And the main thing is that ain't it. That's not it. That's the magician's left hand. You see, and if you're focusing on that, then he's going to steal your watch. So, it's good to see someone your age that already has a grip.
That's what's been happening, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's been getting their watch stolen and their wallet and their pockets picked. And nobody really is seeing it because of the constant distraction. So it is a matter of these elite have become master magicians. That's all it is. And we as a society have a choice. We can either actually look at it for real and say, we're not buying it anymore, or we can join in and we can start manipulating the magic and doing it ourselves. I mean, it all depends on what game we want to play here.
Mm-hmm.
See, but it all begins with a choice, which is something that we have at every single moment is an opportunity to make another choice, which can change the trajectory, of everything that emerges. That too. It may not change what's happened to my mouth over the past few years that's causing me to trip over my own tongue, but it can change the trajectory of the world around us. And Sherry Wisdom, of course, is the host of Elemental Evolution, which is heard on AFR and other places. I got to say that her show is decidedly different from what we get together to do on Wednesdays, but she never knows what the hell I'm going to do. This was definitely a warmer night, I think, than some for you, Sherry, right?
Oh yeah, this was very gentle. This was great. I actually appreciated when I saw Daniel coming up because it gave us the opportunity to kind of talk about the DMT experience. And I kind of got to hear his perspective that we haven't really talked a lot since then. So anyway, I appreciate that, Chuck. Thanks.
No problem. I have fun with this, and we do something different every single Wednesday. Of course, I try and do something different every night of the week here on the Ocelli Effect. And as soon as the website is healthy again, which it may not be healthy at the moment, my website is ocelli.com. It is a work in progress, so there you go. Of course, we do this kind of thing all the time. Not sure what I'm doing tomorrow because I won't have Carmine with me. But on Friday, I think John Potesh will be with me, and we'll be talking about the war on drugs, which is really the war on people, and drugs are the excuse. But anyway, all of that aside, I guess I will give the final word tonight to, I shudder to do it. I will give the final word tonight to Daniel Lewis Crumpton.
Hey guys, you rock, Chuck. You're my best friend. No, I think this has been great. A roundtable of like-minded people. We said some really profound little nuggets of truth there, and it's nice to know that like all the trauma that we had to go through and the indoctrination we broke, that it hasn't fallen on deaf ears. So that should be proof to the elders here that it's not in vain. Everything we had to go through is not in vain. So that's all I got to say. I enjoyed the crap out of it. Hope is a good thing. It's addictive.
Absolutely. And Asa, listen, if you ever decide that you're going to do something crazy like a talk radio show, absolutely come by and talk to me and talk to everybody that was on this panel tonight. Regular Joe might be a little harder to reach, but Daniel's easy to reach. Sherry's easy to reach. So am I through social media, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that we're willing to do all the way around, and I'm speaking for 3 people now, is we're willing to assist you guys in standing up and doing it your way. Not necessarily our way, but come on, take it further. Asa, thanks again for joining us tonight, man.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me.
The Ocelli Effect is done, and I want to thank also Sherry Wisdom, Daniel Lewis Crumpton, Regular Joe. All you guys made this show what it was tonight, and I do appreciate and care about each and every one of you. So guess what's up next? You can probably turn off your device because Vinny Eastwood is up next. Anyway, have a good night, guys.
Ciao, everybody.
Downloaded content podcast. Download content.